Hi everyone, it is a pleasure to be part of a Clockwork Green and share this paper with you. In May 2008, the North American artist duo Henny Sprinkle and Beth Stephens staged a large collaborative performance art wedding in the Redwoods of Santa Cruz, California. Dressed in bright green costumes and joined by a crowd of over 300 friends and collaborators, they made vows to the earth, taking it as partner and lover. The following year, they staged a blue theme wedding in Venice, Italy, during the Biennale International Art Festival. According to Paul Preciado, the queer theorist and art curator who officiated the wedding, they invited the guests to form, quote, a liquid community in order to marry the sea, end quote. The wedding series is part of Sprinkle and Stephens' exploration of sex ecology, an art and activist project that presents the earth as lover, partner in sexual adventures, source and receiver of polymorphous pleasures. Comprising documentary film, performances, walking tours, manifestos, and academic research, Sprinkle and Stephens' multimedia artwork celebrates polyamorous practices ranging from tree hugging to graciolingus. In sex ecology, pleasure is intertwined with the dangers of environmental destruction caused by the intensification of resource exploitation across a range of local and global scales. The artists place their work in the context of a larger movement that they estimate involves 50,000 people around the world who variously identify as ecosexuals. This presentation focuses on a central aspect of Sprinkle and Stephens' project, namely the displacement of the tenacious trope of Mother Earth and the shift to the Earth as lover. If Mother Earth implies that someone is taking care of humans, the Earth as lover is someone humans desire to care for. Such shift, they argue, signals the possibility of a more mutual relationships between humans and non-humans. In what follows, I first discuss the trope of Mother Earth, then I look at Water Makes Us Wet, an ecosexual love story, Sprinkle and Stephens' second documentary film. I contend that while Sprinkle and Stephens' image of the Earth as queer lover complicates Mother Earth in important ways, it relies on the problematic notion of partnership between humans and the Earth. Finally, I indicate a pathway toward a different notion of care, one that takes alterity rather than reciprocity as point of departure. From green consumerism to climate justice movements, Mother Earth has been an ubiquitous presence in current evocations of the planet. In writings and public speeches, Pope Francis invited Catholics to preserve Mother Earth in the face of planetary crisis. German Chancellor Angela Merkel pledged to protect our Mother Earth from Donald Trump's disastrous environmental agenda. Corporations and other neoliberal actors evoke the nurturing planet to make claims to sustainability, even as they engage in environmentally destructive practices. Referring to a supposedly harmonious community of interconnected beings, this trope suggests the possibility of returning to an original unity with nature. Mother Earth is frequently presented as a fragile woman in need of saving, a vulnerable gendered subject that demands protection. Although employed by anarchist Emma Goldman and by the environmental justice activist and ecofeminist Vandana Shiva, this metaphor has been widely contested by feminists of various stripes. The trope of the earth as mother perpetuates the old habit of feminizing nature and confining women to the realms of reproduction and care. As eco-critic Stacey Alaimo points out, invocations of Mother Earth render polluters as, quote, unruly children, turning a systemic problem into a personal one. Even more, I suggest that the image of the benevolent earth fails to capture the nonlinear dynamics of socio-natural systems in late capitalism. It obfuscates the turbulent complexity of geological, biological, and chemical processes that human action affects and amplifies but is not capable of controlling. By conjuring up the figure of the planet as polymorphous lover, Sprinkle and Stevens complicate the binary gender mother earth. Thus, they contribute to the feminist and queer ecological project of highlighting and displacing the heterosexist and patriarchal assumptions that underpin mainstream environmentalism. In Water Makes Us Wet, Sprinkle and Stevens travel across California to document the politics of water in the aftermath of the historic drought that from 2012 to 2016 killed millions of trees and exposed power struggles over resource distribution. A combination of educational documentary, road movie, and experimental film, Water Makes Us Wet focuses on earthly fluids, mountain streams, and vast oceans, but also sewage and wastewater. The film touches on the pleasures of water as well as on issues of water infrastructure and toxicity. On the way from San Francisco, the couple stops at various locations. They travel to Strawberry Creek in San Bernardino, where activists oppose Nestle's bottling of local water. They visit Donna Haraway in her backyard, and toward the end of the journey, they walk on the beach of the Salton Sea, covered in bones of fish dead. The Salton Sea Lake, once a glamorous tourist destination and diverse wetland habitat, is now a shrinking body of toxic water containing chemicals released by agricultural runoff from the surrounding land. The film explores water as effective census element, as well as terrain of struggle over questions of unequal distribution and toxicity. The uneven social ecologies of water shape Henny Sprinkle's memories of growing up in California. A visit to her family house in the suburbs of LA provides the opportunity to reactivate early bodily sensations of being immersed in water. The backyard swimming pool is the setting for a family gathering featuring Sprinkle's sister and nephew. Once a symbol of luxury lifestyle, by the 50s, pools were the private oasis of middle-class Californians. It is in the privileged private waters of the family pool that Annie Sprinkle learned to swim, love water, and have sex. According to some estimates, in 2015, at the peak of the multi-year Californian drought, there were about 1.2 million residential pools in a state where water sources are drying up. And according to data released by the California's Water Resource Control Board, roughly 1 million people do not have regular access to drinking water. The images of Sprinkle Family Pool highlight the paradoxes of life in California, a place of extremes and contradictions, where the ubiquitous presence of swimming pools coexists with the unfolding water crisis. What is striking of Water Makes Us Wet is that it presents the earth as an entity speaking in a subjective first-person voice. The planet is shown rather conventionally as a globe spinning in the darkness, images reminiscent of the famous Apollo's mission pictures that in 1972 visualized the Earth as a blue marble seen from outer space. Its voice is heard at the beginning of the film when it states, quote, "Two artists live on my body. As ecosexuals, they consider me, the Earth, to be their lover too." End quote. Toward the end, the Earth speaks again, revealing mixed feelings about Beth and Annie, who, after all, have yet to figure out how to really care for their more than human lover. What is interesting here is not just what the Earth has to say, but that it speaks, and that, as the film credits reveal, it does so with the voice of a trans woman, the artist and media theorist Sandy Stone. By inviting Stone to lend her voice to the planet, Sprinkle and Stevens move farther away from the normatively gendered Mother Earth. They allude to the disruption of the binary between the natural and the supposedly unnatural embodiment of trans people. This figure of the Earth does not provide unconditional love. Rather, it demands a different kind of care, one based on mutual attention and reciprocity. But what does it mean to imagine the Earth as a speaking entity and to imagine the Earth as a partner? Katrina Sandbilans argues that nature cannot be entirely spoken as a positive presence by anyone. Any claim to speak of or for human nature is, to some extent, a misrepresentation. End quote. Sprinkle and Stevens seem aware of the risks of misrepresentation. In contrast to Mother Earth, that which is already familiar, they imagine the Earth lover as, quote, the as yet unknown, end quote, vulnerable yet powerful and unpredictable. Nature, they write, quote, always exceeds our ability to control it, and this inability is coming into particular sharp focus, end quote. But while they refuse to domesticate the Earth, they embrace its personification as a companion with whom it is possible to experiment more mutual relationships. With this emphasis on reciprocity and the possibility of forging mutual bonds with the Earth, sex ecology can be aligned with Caroline Merchant's partnership ethics. In Merchant's discussion of human-non-human interaction, the notion of partnership is articulated in terms of mutual interdependence and ability to cooperate on an equal ground. Such model, however, elides the question of alterity. For, as Gayatri Spivak points out in distinguishing between the global and the planetary, quote, the planet is in the species of alterity, belonging to another system, and yet we inhabit it, end quote. Thinking planetarity, Spivak suggests, means to think, quote, an alterity that remains underived from us. It is not our dialectical negation, it contains us as much as it flings us away, end quote. If the globe evokes a measurable and self-contained space, the planets point to that which cannot be fully grasped. Characterized by multiplicity and open-endedness, planetarity challenges notions of reciprocities at the basis of the partnership ethics proposed by Merchant. This concept poses the question of revising establishing modes of caring in the face of alterity. Caring for water or other elements that compose the Earth's geological, biological, and chemical processes means to be involved in asymmetrical relationships that do not necessarily entail reciprocity. To sum up, sex ecology refuses to give in to a catastrophic imagination that is politically disempowering. Rather than calling for sacrifice as primary resource for facing climate chaos, Sprinkle and Stevens affirm the pleasures of environmental art and activism. I argue that their work provides rich alternatives to the worn-out tropes of much contemporary environmentalist imagination. This implies a shift away from the traditional association between women and the labor of caring, toward distributed forms of care. What remains to be explored, however, is the extent to which imagining the Earth as lover allows to address the asymmetry between planetary timescales and human timescales. This question calls for further critical and creative engagement from queer feminist thinkers and artists. Thank you.